Welcome to my channel. I hope today's story captures your interest and leaves you wanting more. Your continued support truly means a lot to me. Now, let's get started with the story.
It happened on a Thursday evening, the kind that sinks quietly into your bones. No storms, no shouts, just the slow erosion of what you thought was solid. The house smelled like roasted garlic and marinara, the kind of dinner you make when you're still holding on to the idea that effort counts for something. Chloe was scrolling on her phone. Emma was watching her, like always, and I was at the stove, turning the pasta in the pot, trying not to feel how cold the air had gotten between us. They sat at my table, in my chairs, plates I had bought, a light fixture I had installed above them, crooked for months until I finally got around to fixing it last Sunday. And with a timing that felt rehearsed, they lifted their heads at the same moment. Not toward me, but past me, like I wasn't a person, just some old appliance humming in the background. And then it came. "You're nobody. We'll decide." 2 sentences. One voice, like twins in a horror film, practiced, purposeful, perfectly in sync. The fork in my hand didn't fall. That would have been too dramatic. No, I just placed it down on the counter beside the stove and turned to face them. Emma was chewing like it was nothing. Chloe was smirking into her screen. My first instinct was to ask why. Why now? What had I done or failed to do to earn that? But I didn't, because deep down I already knew. I had spent the last 6 years walking a tightrope no one else in this house even acknowledged. Marrying their mother was the easy part. Loving her, supporting her, promising things I meant with every piece of me. But becoming stepdad, that was a position without a title, a job without authority, a role that came with endless expectations and no respect. And they had been testing me from the beginning. It started with small things. Eye rolls when I asked them to clear the table, muttered comments when I helped with homework, inside jokes I was never part of. Then came the bigger things, the birthday parties where I paid for the cake but wasn't allowed in group photos, the school events where I stood in the back because their real dad might show up, even though he never did. Still, I stayed. I paid for their dental work, their summer camps, their stupid subscription boxes that arrived every month and went unopened by week 2. I fixed the leaking pipe under Chloe's bathroom sink and rewired the bedroom light Emma left on for 12 hours a day. I filled gas tanks. I made waffles. I showed up, and I waited like an idiot for the thank you that never came. But I still showed up, because I told myself I wasn't doing it for gratitude. I was doing it for family. For their mother who carried too much and asked for too little. For a future where maybe, just maybe, we'd all sit at a table and laugh like it was normal. Like I was part of something real. I thought time would solve it. That eventually they'd come around. But that night, that Thursday, told me I had been wrong. "You're nobody. We'll decide." I took the pot off the burner and turned off the stove. The sauce was bubbling too loudly, so I clicked that off too. The kitchen fell into silence. Just the gentle whir of the fridge and the weight of what had just been said. Emma looked at me with that same dull stare she always used when she was done pretending to care. Chloe had gone back to scrolling, not even bothering to hide it. I didn't ask what they meant. I didn't ask who gave them permission to speak to me that way. I didn't ask why they thought they could deliver a sentence like that and still eat the food I just made. Instead, I looked at them, really looked, and I saw it all clearly. They weren't kids anymore. They were old enough to know what they were saying, old enough to mean it, and old enough to understand the effect it would have not just on me but on this household. But they didn't care, because somewhere along the line, they had learned that I didn't matter, that their mother would cushion the fall, that they could spit venom and be coddled in the same breath. And they were right, because Karen, their mother, my wife, wasn't there. Again, she was at her sister's, helping with wedding planning. Or maybe just escaping. She had a way of vanishing right before the tension boiled over, as if she could sense the moment things would become unbearable and slip away before having to witness it. She'd come home, ask how dinner went, and I'd lie, like always. "Okay," I said, "that's all." Not to Emma, not to Chloe, just into the air, like I was closing a file I didn't need anymore. They didn't react. Maybe they didn't hear it. Maybe they didn't care. Maybe they were already on to the next thing. A text from a friend, a TikTok clip, some drama at school that would matter for 15 minutes before fading into the void. But I heard it, and I felt it settle into my bones like the cold. Okay, not an agreement, not a surrender, a decision. They thought my silence was weakness, that I would keep folding, keep cooking, keep paying, keep stepping aside when their real dad decided to show up twice a year with a box of chocolates and a used PlayStation. They thought I would keep holding up a house where I wasn't even allowed a name. But silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's warning. Sometimes it's the sound of a damn right before the break. They didn't know that. Yet, the rest of dinner passed in quiet motion. Plates scraped. Water glasses emptied. Chloe laughed once at something on her phone, and Emma chuckled with her. Some private code I wasn't meant to understand. I cleared the table, washed the dishes, dried each one and placed it back in the cabinet. Mechanical, controlled. Not because I was defeated, but because I needed the rhythm. I needed the structure. Because the storm had already started inside me. And I wasn't going to let it show. Not yet. After they went upstairs, Emma blasting music behind her closed door, Chloe yelling at someone on FaceTime, I sat down at the end of the kitchen table. Same spot I always sat. The chair with the worn groove in the left armrest from my thumb. The one I chose because it faced the window, and I liked watching the sky fade into night. I stared at nothing. The faucet dripped in the sink. The clock ticked above the fridge. A single fly bumped against the window pane again and again, too dumb to escape. And still I said nothing, because I wasn't angry. I was finished. 6 years. Thousands of dollars. Countless hours. Wasted. I had played the long game thinking I was earning a place. That being steady and present would earn me love, or if not love, then respect. And if not respect, then at least acknowledgement. But they had said it plainly. I was nobody. And now they would learn what life looks like when that nobody stops trying to be somebody. I got up, turned off the lights, and climbed the stairs in silence. Past their rooms. Paused outside Karen's, our bedroom. Empty, of course. I stood in the doorway for a moment, watching the soft pulse of the humidifier, the neatly made bed, the unread books gathering dust on her nightstand. Then I walked past it, down the hall into my office. I sat at the desk, woke the computer, opened 3 tabs. Bank, school district portal, insurance login. No noise, no rage, just clicks. The beginning of quiet withdrawal. I wasn't slamming doors. I wasn't packing bags. I was removing names, canceling permissions, freezing flows. And when the girls would wake the next morning, asking about the Wi-Fi, the missing allowance, the busted Netflix login, they wouldn't see the truth right away. But they would. Soon enough. And when they did, when the scaffolding I built collapsed, one bolt at a time, they would realize the thing I had always known. You don't need to raise your voice to burn down a house. You just need to stop holding it up. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was angry. Anger would have been easy. Anger would have given me a reason to shout, to confront, to demand an apology that would never come. No, I stayed awake because I felt clean. Like a man who's finally stepped out of a burning house and realized the smoke he'd been breathing for years wasn't air. The room was dark, lit only by the glow of the monitor. I watched the cursor blink on a blank email draft, not typing anything, just listening to the hum of the computer and the faint thudding bass of Chloe's music upstairs. Her speakers bled through the drywall like a slow, pulsing heartbeat. I waited until the house went still, until the music stopped, until the pipes groaned with midnight silence, and then I started moving. 3 phone calls. No noise, no drama. Just direct lines, short words, digital signatures. First call, the school district. I spoke to the district's financial office, confirmed my removal as the backup payer on Chloe's and Emma's lunch accounts, field trip permissions, and emergency forms. I had been listed as the second parent, never the first, never the one they'd call unless Karen wasn't reachable. That's how it had always been. She got the titles. I got the invoices. I asked the clerk to take my name off everything. You're sure? She asked, typing as she spoke. You're listed on a lot of these forms. Yes, I said. I'm sure. Second call, the bank. The girls each had debit cards linked to a joint account Karen and I had opened 3 years ago. They're practice cards. Training wheels for adulthood. I was the sole funder, transferring $100 a month each, sometimes more, always quietly. I froze the transfers. Left the accounts open. I wasn't cruel. But I removed my hand from the lever. Let them call their real father when the balance hits zero. Third call, the insurance. Dental. Vision. Chloe's inhaler. Emma's allergy testing. All listed under my plan from work. Karen didn't have coverage, her job didn't offer it, and Todd hadn't lifted a finger since the divorce. So, like always, I picked up the slack. I didn't cancel anything. I didn't remove them. I just set a renewal flag. A quiet notice that when the cycle ended in August, they'd need to be re-enrolled. I would not be doing it. I clicked save on the last screen and stared at the confirmation message. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like subtraction. Like finally stopping the payment on a debt I never agreed to take on. Then I closed the laptop, leaned back in the chair, and let the silence fill me. It was the first moment of peace I'd had in months. The next morning, the first fracture showed. Emma came into the kitchen, still in her hoodie, holding her phone out like it was broken. The Uber account's not working, she said. No good morning. No eye contact. I poured coffee into my mug. That's weird, I said. Ask your mom. She blinked. But you? No, I said. Not anymore. She stared at me for a second too long, then turned and walked out. Chloe followed an hour later, in a panic. Her school ID wouldn't scan in the lunch line. She got flagged for insufficient balance. Karen had to drive to the school with cash. That night, she stormed into the living room, eyes wet with rage. You took your name off the lunch account. I got pulled out of line like a criminal. I had to wait in the office. I muted the television and looked up. Why would my name be on that account? I asked. I'm nobody, remember? Her mouth opened, then closed. She turned away, stomped up the stairs. Emma was next. Her field trip, some science thing, overnight stay, 2-hour bus ride and a motel with twin beds, got canceled. Not for the whole school, just for her. Karen had forgotten to sign the reauthorization forms. I'd been the backup signer for years. No form, no trip. I heard her screaming in her room for 10 minutes before Karen went in. Their mother didn't bring it up with me that night. Didn't ask why I'd stepped back. Didn't explain why their school called her twice in one day after 2 years of radio silence. She just made tea and sat beside me on the couch, our legs close but not touching, our silence louder than any fight. She knew. She knew exactly what I was doing, but she didn't say a word, because to speak it aloud would mean admitting that she had let it get this far. That her daughters had been allowed to mock the man who paid for their braces and their braces tightening appointments. That she had heard them sneer, watched them roll their eyes, stood by while I was treated like a butler with a pension. So she sipped her tea and pretended we were okay. And I let her, because what was the alternative? Drag her into it? Demand she pick a side? She already had. Her silence was her signature. By Saturday, the system was sputtering. Chloe asked Karen for her debit card. Karen said she didn't have the extra money. Emma asked if she could take Karen's car to meet friends. Karen told her the gas tank was empty, and I didn't fill it. They didn't know it yet, but the engine had already died. Their lives had run so smoothly for so long they never thought to ask why. They thought the fridge filled itself. That toothpaste appeared in the drawer by magic. That Wi-Fi just worked, and insurance was some free gift from the state. They had no idea that I had been their infrastructure. And now they were learning what life looks like without maintenance. By Monday, Emma came home furious. The school had left a voicemail. She had been selected for a regional academic competition. Karen must have told them yes. But the school needed the $300 registration fee and a guardian signature by Wednesday. I need the money, she said, standing in the doorway to my office. I didn't look up from my screen. Talk to your mom. She hesitated. She said to talk to you. I looked up then. met her eyes for the first time in days. "And what did you say to me last Thursday?" Her face paled. She swallowed. "That was just a thing. We didn't mean. You said I'm nobody. You said, we'll decide." She fidgeted. "It was just a joke." "No," I said. "It was a decision. And now you get to live with it." She didn't cry. Not then. She just left. But later I heard her door slam. Karen cornered me in the laundry room that night. She closed the door, kept her voice low. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Emma's devastated." "I'm not doing anything," I said, folding towels. "I'm just not fixing things anymore." "You're punishing them." "No, I'm letting them experience reality. That's not punishment. That's parenting." Her face twisted. "They're kids, Michael." "No," I said. "They're old enough to weaponize their words. Old enough to decide who matters and who doesn't. I'm just taking them at their word." She didn't respond right away, just leaned against the dryer, arms crossed, the weight of it all starting to finally land on her. And then she said something that surprised even me. "You didn't deserve that." I froze. "What they said," she continued, quieter now, "it was cruel, and I let it happen. I let them believe it was okay to treat you like that." I turned and looked at her. For the first time in months, I saw the guilt in her face. Not the shallow kind, the real kind, the kind that stings. But it didn't change anything. "You raised them to believe love has no price," I said. "That they can spit on the man who carries them and still expect him to carry more. That ends now." "I know," she said. It was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever get from her. I left the laundry room, went to bed. That night, I dreamed of silence. Not absence. Not loneliness. Peace. The next morning, the internet glitched. Chloe screamed from upstairs. Emma yelled through the floorboards. Karen came down in a robe and slippers, hair wild, eyes frantic. "Did you change the Wi-Fi password?" "No," I said. "But it's not working. I stopped paying for the mesh upgrade last month. They throttled the speed. That was the last grace period." She stared at me, blinking. The girls stomped down, phones in hand. "There's no signal. It's freezing. I have a Zoom quiz." I sipped my coffee. "Then study offline," I said. "Use a book." Emma's mouth fell open. Chloe turned to Karen. "Mom, fix it." Karen's lips parted. Then she looked at me, looked at the mug in my hand, the stillness in my face, and she said, "Figure it out yourselves." The girls stormed off, sputtering, and I sat there, calm, drinking my coffee while the world they had built on my back began to tremble. Because this was just the beginning. The quiet moves were already in motion, and systems don't fail with an explosion. They collapse one silent part at a time. The panic didn't arrive as an explosion. That's not how real collapse works. It started at the edges, quiet, twitching, confused. At first, they thought it was a glitch. The Netflix login asked for a payment update. Chloe messaged me from upstairs. "Hey, the account's weird. Can you fix it?" No greeting, no signature. Just the lazy entitlement of a child who had never once wondered where the money came from. I left her on read. Later that day, Emma's Spotify stopped mid-song. Ads flooded the stream. Her scream echoed down the stairs, as if someone had died. Maybe in her world, someone had. The premium membership was gone, and with it, her curated ad-free existence. She confronted me in the kitchen, phone held like a weapon. "Spotify's not working." I didn't look up from my eggs. "Maybe use the free version." She blinked. "It's your account." "No," I said. "It was mine, and I canceled it." "You what?" I turned the stove off, plated the eggs. "Chloe said I'm nobody. You said you'd decide. So I decided too." She scoffed, spun around, and stormed back upstairs. Not out of anger, but confusion. They didn't get it yet. They thought this was a tantrum. They were waiting for the swingback, the part where I softened, where I returned to the role I'd been assigned, the steady provider in the background. But I had retired, quietly, without warning, without a final paycheck or farewell lunch. That afternoon, Chloe tried to use her Uber account again. Still dead. Emma discovered her debit card had been declined at the mall. Karen called me from her car, whispering, "They're freaking out." Emma couldn't even buy a sandwich. I didn't respond. By Friday, they were frantic. The kind of fear that doesn't announce itself, just changes their posture, their tone, the way they hovered around the house like shadows instead of daughters. The house felt different, quieter but sharper, like a room full of glass just waiting for someone to fall. Karen sat me down that evening, her voice low, eyes tired. "You've made your point." I raised an eyebrow. "They're scared," she said. I folded my arms. "Are they sorry?" "They're confused. They're kids, Michael. They didn't think." "No," I said. "They didn't care." She sighed. "You're still angry." "I'm not angry," I said. "I'm lucid." She went quiet then, chewing on the silence like it might give her something to say. But nothing came, because she knew. She had spent years telling me to be patient, that they were just adjusting, that time would mend it, that boys were harder, but girls could be won over if I just kept showing up. But now the years were over, and all I had to show for them was a hollow name, unspoken in the house I bought, for girls I never fathered but funded like I had. That weekend, the field trip forms were returned and signed. The school sent a polite email. Second parent required. Emergency authorization needed. I deleted it. On Sunday morning, Chloe tried to log in to her tutoring app. Access denied. The subscription had lapsed, one I had funded for a year and a half without being asked. I watched her spiral from the hallway. Tears, stomping, shouting. Emma told her, "Just ask Mom." And Chloe, face red, whispered. She said she doesn't have the card anymore. It was true. I'd taken Karen off the backup account. No more secondary logins. No more silent access. It wasn't about punishment. It was about correction. If they wanted independence, they could live it. If they wanted authority, they could carry its weight. But they couldn't. That became clear on Monday. The school called. Emma had been dropped from a limited enrollment STEM elective. The spot had been hers, until the participation fee went unpaid. Karen hadn't checked her email. I certainly hadn't. Emma cried that night. Real tears. Not performative. Not the crocodile kind she used to deploy when caught lying or failing a test. These were deeper. I heard her through the wall. "She doesn't even want to do the class," Chloe muttered, trying to soothe her. "I did," Emma snapped. "I just didn't know we had to pay this year. They said the fee's been covered since 7th grade. That's because I had paid it. Quietly, without being asked, without being thanked." Now she felt the absence. Karen didn't look at me that night. Not during dinner. Not while she folded the towels I had washed. Not while she lay in bed beside me, her back curved toward the wall, like the guilt might vanish if she faced away from it. I didn't force her to speak. I had nothing left to argue. I had been erased from their lives, now I was simply returning the favor. By Tuesday, Chloe stopped asking. She sat on the couch that afternoon, legs curled under her, hoodie pulled tight, scrolling a dead phone. No charger. She'd lost hers weeks ago. Usually she would borrow mine. I watched her stare at the black screen like it owed her something. She didn't ask. Not once. That told me everything. Emma, though, she still had a few tricks left. That evening, she came into my office. Knocked. I didn't look up. She cleared her throat. "Mr. Thomas?" That got my attention. She hadn't called me that in years. Not since she was 10 and still trying to figure out if I was going to stay. I turned slowly in my chair. "Yes?" "I was wondering if..." She hesitated. Bit her lip. "If you'd be willing to sign the form. For the elective." I stared at her. Not coldly. Not cruelly. Just blank. "You mean the class that requires payment and parent approval?" I asked. She nodded. "Even though I'm neither your parent nor your payee?" She hesitated. "You used to be." "No," I said. "I used to act like one. You made it clear I'm not." Her lips parted, but the words didn't come. She turned and left. I went back to my work. That night, the house was still. No music, no TV, no shouting. Just the low hum of a family realizing they had reached the edge of something, and that the bridge they thought would always be there was gone. Karen tried again the next morning. "Michael, please." Her voice was soft, cautious. They didn't understand the consequences. I sipped my coffee. "Do they understand now?" She nodded, slowly. "Good," I said. "Then this is working. They're scared." "They should be." She flinched. "That's not fair." "No," I said. "What wasn't fair was giving me the bill and none of the respect. What wasn't fair was letting them live under a roof I built while mocking the man who built it. They're just kids. They're old enough to choose cruelty. They're old enough to feel consequence." She didn't speak again. Not that morning. Not that day. Because she knew. Deep down, she had always known. She let this happen. Her silence was the soil where their contempt grew. Now she could live in the garden. The next time the school called, they asked to speak to Todd. Todd, the real father. Karen fumbled. Told them she'd get him to call. But Todd didn't answer. Of course he didn't. He was a myth. A man of disappearances. A whisper on birthdays, a ghost at graduations. Always absent. Always forgiven. Now the school needed him. The forms needed him. The balance sheets, the permission slips, the authority, it all pointed to him. And he was nowhere. The panic turned to desperation by Thursday. Emma left the house in tears after the school counselor told her she'd missed the registration deadline. The STEM program filled her spot with a waitlisted student. She'd have to take general science instead. Karen sat at the kitchen table, head in her hands, whispering, "God, what have we done?" I didn't answer, because I hadn't done anything. I had simply stopped doing everything. It's funny how quickly a system fails when the invisible gears stop turning. When the quiet man in the background sits down and folds his arms. For years, I was told I didn't matter. Now they knew what life looked like without me. And this was just the silence before the scream. The day Todd finally called was the same day Emma stopped speaking to anyone. He left a voicemail. Not for me, for Karen. I heard it through the thin drywall. Muffled words bleeding from her phone speaker as she played it back in the bedroom. "Hey, got your messages. I don't know what you want me to say. You're dropping this on me like I've got anything left to give. I'm doing my best. The girls are. They're not mine right now. You get that, right? I'm out here trying to keep things together on my end. I don't have the money. Maybe next month. Maybe." He ended with a sigh and a muttered, "Jesus." Like he was the victim in someone else's wreckage. Karen didn't cry after the message. She just stood there, staring at her phone like it had betrayed her. We didn't speak that night. Emma didn't come down for dinner. Chloe did, barely. Long enough to microwave leftovers and eat in silence, her AirPods stuffed into her ears like barriers. She didn't look at me, but she didn't insult me either. That was new. I sat at the head of the table where I had always sat. Except now it didn't feel like a seat of authority. Felt like a grave marker. The girls ate and disappeared. Karen went to bed early. The house was dark by 9. No television. No laughter. No flickering lights behind closed doors. Only stillness. Only the sound of a structure folding in on itself. I stayed downstairs. Sat in the living room in the dark. The soft hum of the refrigerator the only sound left. And I thought about everything I had given. 6 years of bills. Of birthdays. Of Christmas mornings where I was the one assembling bikes and staying up late to wrap gifts Karen forgot to buy. 6 years of silence. Of swallowing pride. Of showing up again and again, hoping that if I just stayed long enough, they'd see me. Not as a replacement. Not even as a father. Just as someone who mattered. But they never did. They saw a provider. A safety net. A man-shaped wallet. And the moment I stopped playing the role, the illusion collapsed. Not with rage, but with silence. Because here's the thing no one tells you. Families don't always break in chaos. Sometimes they just slow down, deteriorate, rot under their own weight. Until one day, there's nothing left to hold them up, and they sag into themselves like an old roof in the rain. The next morning, I didn't make breakfast. I didn't pour orange juice or toast bread or leave the coffee pot full. I dressed. I packed a duffel. Just a few things. Work clothes. Pair of boots. My laptop. Enough to stay gone for a few days. Karen found me at the front door. "Where are you going?" she asked. Her voice was thin, hollow. "To my brother's," I said. "He's got a cabin. I need time." "For how long?" I shrugged. "As long as it takes." She nodded, slow. "You're not coming back?" "I'm not sure," I said. She didn't cry. She just looked tired, older than the day before. A woman who finally realized the scaffolding wasn't temporary, that it had always been me, that it had always been fragile. "You could have said something sooner," she whispered. "I did," I said. "Every day, in every act." "Michael, they're still just girls, teenagers. They didn't know what they were saying." "They knew." I stepped onto the porch. The morning was cold, gray, clouded, the kind of sky that never brightens. She followed. "They didn't mean it," she said again, as if repetition would make it true. But I didn't turn back. "Words don't need to be meant to wound," I said. "They just need to be said." She wrapped her arms around herself, like the cold had just caught her. But it wasn't the weather. It was truth. "Will you call?" she asked. "When I know what to say." The door closed behind me without a sound. I drove for 2 hours. Didn't turn the radio on. Didn't check my phone. Just drove. Past the edge of town. Past the last gas station where they still know your name. The cabin was empty, dusty, quiet, perfect. I spent the next 3 days doing what I hadn't done in years. Nothing. No spreadsheets. No repairs. No school forms. No listening to slamming doors or passive-aggressive silence at the dinner table. Just firewood, rain, sleep. Karen texted once. "We miss you." I didn't reply, because I knew what she meant was, we miss the help, not the man, not the husband, not the invisible worker who kept the gears turning. Just the silence that let everyone else speak louder. By the 5th day, the emails started. School notices, deadlines, late fees. Chloe's field trip had been canceled for non-payment. Emma's class schedule was being reassigned. Then came the voicemail from Emma. Voice trembling. As I imagined, read. "I didn't mean it. I didn't mean what I said that night. Please, just call me." I played it once, then deleted it, because it wasn't a message of love. It was a signal flare from a sinking ship. I stayed gone for 10 days. On the 11th, I came home. The lawn was overgrown. Trash bins still full. The lights in the foyer flickered. No one had changed the bulb. Inside, Karen was cooking. Something simple. Stir fry, maybe. The girls were on the couch. No TV. No music. Just sitting. They looked up when I came in. Emma didn't speak. Chloe gave me a nod. Half-hearted. But real. Karen didn't rush to greet me. Didn't leap into apology. She just said, "There's food." I nodded. We ate in silence. After dinner, Karen asked if we could talk. I said yes. We sat in the dining room. Same chairs. Same table where they declared me nobody. She looked different now. No makeup. No polish. Just truth. "They miss you," she said. "They miss what I did." "They miss you," she repeated. Firmer. "They never said it when I was here. They didn't know how." I laughed. Dry. Bitter. "They knew how to hurt." She went quiet. Then, "I can ask them to apologize." "No," I said. "They need to want to. If it's not real, it means nothing." She nodded, eyes glassy. I looked around the house. The pictures. The walls I painted. The shelf I built with Emma. The broken cabinet hinge Chloe swore she'd fix. I looked at the family I had supported, and who had never seen me until I vanished. "You think this can be fixed?" I asked. Karen didn't answer right away. Then, "Only if you want it." That's when I knew. They'd learned panic. They'd tasted absence. But not remorse. And definitely not respect. I stood. "I'll stay in the guest room," I said. She nodded. I walked upstairs, past the girls' rooms, heard the silence inside them. Chloe's door creaked. She stepped into the hall. "Hey," she whispered. I paused. "Thanks for coming back," she said. I didn't respond, because words are easy. It's respect that's hard. That night, I lay in the guest bed and stared at the ceiling, wondering what would come next. Not reconciliation, not revenge, just the question. The same one I'd been asking since that first night. When they said I was nobody, when they decided I didn't belong. And now I ask you, was I wrong? Was I cruel to let the system collapse? Or was it the only way to prove I'd ever been holding it up? Tell me, would you have endured it longer? Would you have stayed when the silence became louder than love? Or would you have finally stepped back and watched them fall?